Let's talk today about 9 things that I no longer do as a Christian woman. I became a Christian when I was 17 on Mother's Day. I just realized I could not live this life on my own anymore. I couldn't keep just striving and trying in my own strength. And I finally was like, Jesus, you're going to have to save me. I can't do this on my own. I kept just trying to clean myself up and just really live right without the power that comes from Jesus and the Holy Spirit. And so I share these 9 things humbly to just let you know how different life was before I became a Christian and how things changed for me. Perhaps just to get you thinking about your life and how you would love to see things change for you. And, of course, I'm still a work in progress. I have not arrived, but I can tell you life has been so much sweeter with Jesus, living for him and with his power in me to help me see things differently. If you're new here, my name is Lana. I'm a mom of 5, and I help new moms who are living in a state of overwhelm and sleep deprivation just transform into the capable, faithful, and just peaceful moms they have always longed to be. If that is you, I would love for you to hit subscribe. And before we dive in, I want to let you know that I have compiled a huge book list for you. So many great books that have been helpful to me. I know they'll be helpful to you. This book list is split into all kinds of different categories, from home to cleaning to mothering, birth, homeschool. So many favorite recipe books. I know you're just going to love it, and you're going to find a book that's going to be really helpful for your journey. So I'll leave that link down below for you. The first one that I really try not to do as a Christian woman anymore is to be easily offended. When I think about my life before Christ, I was very offended just by the way people looked at me, or even just like a subtle comment. I would always dramatize it and kind of look at it the wrong way. And honestly, I was very easily offended. I think it perhaps was my pride, and I thought a lot of myself, but also I just was not choosing to believe the best. And I was sitting in church one day, and I don't know if you've heard the saying, but it's that we're changed by 1,000 forgetful sermons. Like you go on a Sunday, you're like, oh, that was so good. And then the next day you can't really remember what it was about. But little by little, sitting in a gospel-centered quality sermon that's rooted in the word, some little nuggets that just start to change everything. And one thing the pastor said was, as Christians, we should strive to be as unoffendable as possible. And really, by taking offense, we are really focusing on ourselves instead of the other person. And also, this linked in with some other things in my life. For instance, when we lived out in LA for a couple of years, my husband would get kind of frustrated with traffic there. He's from a small town in Tennessee, and he just was like, oh man, like people just are driving so aggressively and always cutting me off and things like that. And what I said to him, and this sounds like I think, oh, I'm better than my husband. No, it's not it. Was just that, hey, I don't think that other people were trying to cut you off to be rude. I think that other people are cutting you off because traffic there is really chaotic, and people are just really trying to think about themselves and think about their time getting home and their safety on the road. I think it's very true in life that a lot of times people aren't trying to offend us. I think, quite frankly, a lot of people are just thinking about themselves. They're not looking to the interest of others. They're looking to the interest of themselves. And this is human nature, but what's really cool about what Jesus does is he helps us overcome human nature and tap into his nature. And so I think it just really radically transformed my friendships and my relationships when I tried to stop being offended by every little thing. For instance, if some friends were going out and I happened to see a picture and I'm not invited when I normally would be in that crowd, I started to think, there's probably a really good reason I wasn't invited to that, and it wasn't something that I need to be offended by. I started to be able to enjoy friendships where another friend that perhaps I knew before and had connected to another friend, they became closer than I was with them. And I was suddenly able to enjoy their friendship without being offended that they were growing closer together than I was with them. And that's okay. I was in a season where I had a lot of small children. I wasn't able to invest the time. They naturally bonded over certain things. And it's like, great. A joy shared is a joy doubled. and their shared friendship that I loved that friend, I loved that other friend, they became really close, and now I can spend time with both of them, was like, you know what? I get to benefit from the fact that they've grown closer together, and it's not like I have to hang out with this friend separately or this friend separately. And I've seen that a lot in the woman world, where we get really offended when we're not always included. When other women grow closer without us, we feel like it's a personal attack towards us, when I think genuinely they're not thinking about us. And what's the opposite, right? People feel like they have to walk on eggshells around us, and people feel like they're only doing things so we don't get mad. And that's a terrible place to be in friendship and relationship. So honestly, just like as unoffendable as possible has radically changed my relationships. And I know that's because of Jesus. I know that if people are trying to offend me, I think about Jesus on the cross, and I think about the people that put him on the cross. And Jesus said, Lord, forgive them, for they know not what they do. People were aggressively trying to offend him. And I see very clearly in scripture, when I look at Jesus, that he was very unoffendable, because he could see that a lot of times that offense was coming from a place of deep hurt or misunderstanding. And so that's another thing I've tried to teach my kids is, hey, a lot of times hurt people, and it's a kind of like a villain mentality. They're rising up in their pain. And so trying to look at people from a lens of like, you're probably in a lot of pain that you would be so outwardly trying to offend me. Okay, that was a long one. The second one is gossip. I feel like this killed so many relationships for me in my life. And even as a Christian, I still struggled with gossip. And it's tempting, all the time. There's the Proverbs are full of verses on gossip. So like here's one, Proverbs 11:13. A gossip goes around revealing secrets, but a trustworthy person keeps a confidence. Proverbs 16:28. A contrary person spreads conflict. A gossip separates close friends. Another one, Proverbs 18:8. A gossip's words are like choice food that goes down to one's innermost being. It's just like it can feel really good when you know certain privy information and you spread it. I heard it's like feathers that come out of a pillow and you can't get them back in the pillow. And forevermore, the person that you spread the gossip to, they can't unknow those things about that person. And so it destroys people's reputations. It is just from the enemy. And I realized that I was really, really hurting people, and people wouldn't trust me the same way. And I really wanted to be able to be a safe place for people, but I couldn't be a safe place for my friends if I was going to reveal confidence. And so my husband and I, after, dividing close friends, when we were newlyweds and things like that, we just were like, we're going to make a high commitment to not gossip and to avoid gossip. And I love that my pastor now says, if somebody's talking to you about something that you really can't do something about, and it has to do with another person, like that is gossip. Because like I think women even do this sometimes in prayer requests. I would be like in a small group with women and they would be sharing a prayer request, but it really truly borderlined on gossip. And so we just have to be like very, very careful about that, because I think as women, it's just something that slips in there and is so subtle, but it really divides close friends. It's so hurtful. And I just think it's ultimately from our flesh and from the enemy. And so I definitely try to avoid that at all costs, because truly relationships are some of the most important things we have. There's a study that was done by, gosh, I think it was like a Harvard study, and it's the biggest study on happiness. And despite money, despite jobs, despite all these things that you would think make people happy, truly it was the people at their end of their lives that had the deepest relationships that showed the highest levels of happiness. And so when we think about our relationships, being unoffendable, like I talked about, but also avoiding any semblance of gossip is going to help preserve those really precious relationships. The third thing is working to please man versus trying to please the Lord. Like this is something I was very stuck in before, just really a people pleaser. It's still, of course, a struggle. I don't even realize sometimes how deep of a struggle it is, even sometimes on YouTube, not wanting to ruffle any feathers. I think there's a difference in sometimes YouTubers try to take a really hot take to try to stir up controversy, but like that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about trying to never bring up controversy because you always want to please man. And I think when I became a Christian, what started to shift for me was this audience of one. This audience, they call it AO1 in the sports ministry I was in when I was at Tennessee. And it's living for the audience of one. Like, is my highest aim to please the Lord first and foremost? And even I struggle with this as a new mom and as a homemaker. Like when I came home from being a softball coach, I used to coach college softball and tried to run my home with my little guy. I started to live to please my husband, like he was my boss, like or something. It was just like a weird paradigm shift. And then I had to be like, he can't see all the work that I do here. It's hidden work to him. And I am living to please him. Like I want him to praise me for all of my hard work and praise me for all the times I'm getting up in the middle of the night or praise me for XYZ. No, the Lord sees all that we do all day long. He sees every diaper we change. He sees every dish we wash. He sees every load of laundry we fold and put away, all for the sake of loving on the people in our home and trying to bring glory to him, audience of one. So that majorly shifted for me, but when I became a Christian. The next one was I used to just try to be as busy as possible. Like I felt like productivity gave me worth. And what shifted for me when I became a Christian, and a lot of these shifts, they didn't happen overnight. They were like little by little by little. I think sanctification, which that's a big word, but becoming more like Jesus, there's 3 types of sanctification. There's, immediately when we give our lives to Christ, we're sealed with him. And that's the first part of sanctification. The second part of sanctification is when we get to heaven, we are fully and completely made new. But there's this third part of sanctification that's happening our whole life long, where little by little by little, we're throwing off the flesh, we're saying no to sin, and we're becoming more like him. And it's the work of the Holy Spirit that's happening inside of us. And one thing for me is I just felt like productivity and a busy schedule made me feel important, made me feel productive. And what I realized instead was that when you look at the life of Jesus, he had margin. He had time with the Lord. He put people first above any kind of checklist. He was God focused, Father focused, and he was people focused, but he carved out margin by getting up early and getting quiet with the Lord and getting away from the masses. And I realized that I needed a Sabbath. I needed a rest day. I needed a day where I would pause even from housework and all the things. And even when I was in college and I was a new Christian and I was trying to learn, I would very intentionally try to take a day off of studying and a day off of softball. We would get one day a week off from playing softball because I played softball in college. And I would just try to get outside, be with friends, do things that would recharge me, get alone at a coffee shop and read the word. Just really taking time to sharpen that axe so that then I could come back and cut more the next week. But our culture says more, 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 hustle culture, boss babe culture, more, more, more. And there is something to the grind. I think the sowing and reaping principle, but I think there is a principle of margin and Sabbath in the Bible that is essential to how we're made. The 5th thing I no longer try to do as a Christian is waste resources. So what do I mean by that? I had this paradigm shift as I grew in the Lord that, wow, everything I have is the Lord's. All of my time, all of my money, all of my physical health, all of my relationships, all of my family, everything I have is the Lord's. And I started to feel this good weight on my shoulders of okay, being a steward means you take care of something on the behalf of other people, is that what I have, all that I have is the Lord's. This makes tithing, this changes the way you look at tithing. Tithing is giving 10% of your income. And people can get kind of crazy about this because maybe it doesn't say explicitly in the New Testament tithing. I'm not here to get on that soapbox. But when we think about giving, it's easier to give when we look at 100% of what I have is the Lord's. What if I give him back 10% to go towards the mission of the kingdom? instead of being like 100% of what I have is the Lord's and I'm going to give him 10%. It's like, no, all that we have is his. And also, it helps us see that we have resources beyond money that are very, very precious. And even like my children, they are his first and foremost. They are not mine. And it is my job to bring them up in the fear and the admonition of the Lord. And, it just changes the way I parent. Like, okay, they're not mine, they're his. The sixth thing is to think only of myself. I was such a selfish person before I came to Christ, and I still very much struggle with selfishness. And one verse I have up in my home, and I'm not going to say this perfectly, but is think not only of your own interest, but also the interest of others. Because I'm constantly trying to get my kids to understand, like, hey, if we're going to live in this home together in some semblance of peace, we cannot constantly always be thinking about our needs only. We have to be thinking of the needs of our brothers and our sisters. I have to be thinking of the needs of Matt, not just myself. And, I didn't realize this, but before I became a Christian, I really looked at other people kind of like a villain perspective, like how they have minions. I looked at other people as, okay, you're here to help me get what I want. And wow, like I used to be a pitcher in softball, and I think some of this, like even this pitcher's mentality of like, you are behind me to help me get my outs. And if you do not catch that ball, like how dare you? Like I set you up to get my out. Like this is so twisted. But I would think only of myself, and I wondered why I didn't have close relationships, and I wondered why people were hurt by me. I was living like a villain. Like that's something I talk about on my channel a lot. I think the last video I did was like a one mindset for homemakers, and I talk about this framework that's so essential, and it's called Victim Villain Hero Guide. I learned it from a book called Hero on a Mission. But it's very interesting. A victim, a villain, and a hero. It's the premise that they all have pain, but they do something different with it. A victim lays down in their pain. They feel very helpless. They're waiting on somebody to save them. But a villain rises up in their pain and they do the wrong thing with their pain, and the villain is always eliminated. But then a hero says, okay, I'm going to take this pain, and for the sake of other people and not wanting other people to experience the same pain I have, I'm going to go on a mission on the behalf of others. All to say, thinking only of myself was something I did a lot before I came to Christ. And now it's like, okay, we get to do the opposite. Like we get to not only look to the interest of ourselves, because naturally we're just going to automatically look to the interest of ourselves, but I get to look to the interest of others because people are the mission in this life. It's not just that people are somehow here to help me accomplish my mission, like they are the mission. And when we're living as quote unquote the hero's journey, we're doing the right thing with our pain for the sake of others. So putting that in the perspective of motherhood, I wake up, there's hard things, little micro sufferings I have, but I'm doing it for the sake of my family. I'm creating a peaceful home. I'm putting my hand to the good work for the sake of others and all the people that get to come into my home. The seventh one is now I try to take care of my body, whereas before there was this obsessiveness and control with my body. And what I mean by that is I don't know that I fully had an eating disorder, but I would obsess about my body. I would obsess about the calories. I struggle with overeating. And I think a lot of that was because I was trying to eat my emotions, and I was using food like as a coping mechanism to like numb out the pain, like being a villain towards my own body. Because, I would look at myself in the mirror and either feel really good or bad about myself based on what I saw and about how much self-control I had. And now I look at my body like a steward. My body is the Lord's. I need to take care of it. I need to be good to my body. Like hurting my body with bad food is not actually being a great steward of my body. But I am not like idolizing my body anymore and thinking about how good I can look in some certain outfit. It's more of like a self-respect of taking care of myself and putting good food in my body and doing good exercise for my body and getting good sleep and all the things versus a control and obsession, if that makes sense. Okay, the eighth one is to allow myself to just hear anything, see anything, and instead be very careful about what I see and what I hear. Because whatever we hear and see comes into our heart and then comes out of our mouths. And I was listening to music that just had all kinds of crazy stuff in it. Like, even like a seemingly innocent song, but is talking about women like they're objects, or talking about sex in a really casual way, like a country song. Country songs do that all the time. I'm not even talking about raunchy rap. Like, I'm talking about just a song that talks about people sleeping together, or talks about drinking to drown the pain, all the things. Like, all of that will come out of our mouths. And it's just something to think about. The movies that we watch, and the shows that we watch, like, are we putting sewage into our hearts and then being surprised when that comes out in our lives? And so now I just try to be really careful about what comes into my heart, because I know that it's like a sowing reaping. Like, I'm going to, like, it's not that there's no way that can't impact my life. And so I just take that a lot more seriously. And I've always been very sensitive to scary movies. Like, even before I was a Christian, I just could not get those images out of my head. It would very deeply impact me. And, some people would make fun of me for that. But the same thing, like the images, the lyrics, all of that would stick with me. And it's hard to kind of get that out. So just being careful what comes in. And the last thing is just to subscribe to this like toxic feminism. And this is a controversial one, but I think feminism today believes that men are our greatest problem. We're being like oppressed by men, and that babies are burdens. And I don't believe that at all as a Christian. I think God made man and woman in his image. I think if there is any oppression by men of women, it's just sin, but men are not the enemy. I have sons now, and they're not the enemy. Men are not the enemy. I think if anything in our culture, we're oppressing men and we're putting them down. We need to be helping men to rise up and be all that they can be. And part of what they're made to do is to help take care of women, and not to objectify and sexualize them. It's just, there's some really toxic feminism that I think is keeping women in chains, to believe that the highest form of a woman is to try to be like a man. I don't think that's true at all. I think God made women uniquely different than men, and that we should delight in being a woman. I mean, every creature that God has made delights in being what it is, all except basically women. The giraffe doesn't try to be a whale, but why as women are we trying to be like men? I think uniquely we need to tap into what it means to be uniquely feminine and how beautiful that is. And I'm not talking about trad wife stuff where we dress in long skirts all the time only, and have no opinion. Like, that's not it at all. If anything, I'm made to be a helpmate to my husband, and to bring my opinion to the table in a really kind and respectful way. I'm not helping him by being a doormat. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about this toxic feminism that I think is really keeping women in chains, and they're waking up when they're like 40 years old and they've put all their life only into a career, and they're like, okay, but wait, I think I want to get married now. I've been living 40 years of my life acting like I don't need no man. And now, okay, I would like to be married and I would like to have kids, but I haven't prioritized that. And I think that these women are really broken from those decisions. And so I would really love to see toxic feminism end, and women start to like lean into all that it means to be a woman, and just fully embrace it and delight in how we're made, and to seek the Lord for what that means and not our culture, because I think our culture has some twisted views on either side of what it means to be a woman. So those are the things that I am trying to do and not do as a Christian woman. I hope it, gets you thinking. I'd love to hear your thoughts down below. It's cool if you don't agree with me. Remember, the first thing I said was I try to be as unoffendable as possible. So if you've got a hot take in the comments that you want to leave, I'll try to be as unoffendable as possible. I think we're all, we can all say where we are and what we think right now and start a dialogue, and it doesn't have to be offensive. But also, I'd love to hear, what are you not doing now as a Christian woman? I'd love to hear that down below. And thanks for being here. If you've resonated with any of this, tell me. I'd love for you to stay, hit subscribe, and I'll see you again in the next video.
It's so unnecessary dwelling about the past, 'cause I know that God is good. He led me to where I'm at. Sometimes I feel like giving up, you're giving in, but everything happens for a reason. It won't always be like iron, sharpens iron, making me stronger, calling me higher. When we come together, just like iron, sharpens iron, making us stronger, calling us higher. When we're helping each other, we're growing together.